Welcome, and this is Jeffrey Booth for the Stories for My Lights YouTube channel. Now today, I'm going to do things a little differently because, believe it or not, my book did not give me 3 words, and I haven't given a story in a couple of days. So this made me realize I gotta get a story out there for my boy my boy Alden, and anybody else out there who may have somehow stumbled upon this bizarre circus of depravity. I jest. But today I was just going to, instead of having 3 items, I was just going to pick a writing prompt, or I guess in this case, a verbal storytelling prompt, which is just a starting point for the story. And then you will let your imagination blossom out like a tree reaching for the sunlight. Or alternatively, 8 completely autonomous octopus tentacles randomly grabbing for snacks that it wants, but doesn't get. So, today's story, and this is going to be completely off the top of my head, is going to start in a small town in the Alps Mountains in Europe. And in this small town, which is named Mahogany, there lives a little girl, a precocious girl, a curious girl, a girl who is known at times to, shall we say, get into trouble. One day, in her village, which by the way was a small village, not a lot of people, maybe 300 people, they lived a very old school lifestyle. But one day in this village, this girl, whose name was Snailya, she was outside playing, doing some jump roping, and having a grand old time. It was a beautiful day, the sky was blue, the birds were chirping. Even though it was the middle of summer, some of the nearby mountain peaks still had little bits of snow clinging on, which she absolutely loved. But as she was jump roping, she counted up to 20, and that was her new record. And she got really excited and flailed her arms about and accidentally let go of one of the ends of her jump rope. And it went flying out to the edge, where it landed underneath the deck of a nearby building. And so she went to grab the handle that had flown off, and she got down on her hands and knees and looked under the deck. And she saw something under there that was completely unexpected. Well, maybe not super unexpected, but unexpected for her. A cat. Now you see, in this village, there were not many cats. Because of the altitude, they just didn't like it. And there weren't many mice for them to eat. And it got so cold in the winter, not a lot of people had pet cats. So she was kind of excited because she knew what cats were, but she had never had one of her own. So she ducked down and went and tried to get the cat to come. But it merely hissed at her and then backed away. And she said, well, that is annoying. But, she had heard before how annoying cats were and how maybe not annoying, maybe self-centered and self-aggrandizing and not necessarily the best cooperators. So she decided she was going to go back to her house, and she found a little bit of cheese. She got a piece of fish that she had eaten the night before and a couple other little goodie snacks. And she came back down, looked under the deck, where she had left her jump rope, by the way, and found that the cat was indeed already eating something. It had taken her jump rope and right in the middle chewed it in half. When she got down and looked underneath, it was looking her right in the eyes. Now, cats don't have human expressions, but one would not have been foolish to assume that the cat had a look of amusement on its face. It looked as if it was laughing at her, and she did not care for that. So she said, "Oh, you darn cat," and she got up and she stomped around a little bit because she loved her jump rope. And in this village, it wasn't like you could just go to the nearest Walmart or Target and buy another jump rope. They had to travel many miles down alpine roads into a village that was about 60 miles away, but it took them about 2 hours to get there. Plus, her family, which in this case was just her mother, for she and her mother lived alone, didn't really have money to be spending on things like jump ropes. But her precociousness and curiosity came to the forefront, and she decided, all right, I'm going to go see what's up with the cat. So she got under, looked underneath, and once again the cat hissed at her. Well, this time she held out the cheese, and the cat slowly crept over, looking as if it could hiss or claw and dart backwards at any moment, and sniffed the cheese. He took a sniff and went, mm-mm, and made kind of a shaking head no face at her. She thought this was very rude and very annoying, and it frustrated her to no end. She held out the piece of fish. Once again, the cat crept up. It sniffed. Ooh, but this time it didn't back away. And faster than she could have thought possible, it went, oh, took the fish right out of her hand, crept back into the darkness at the back of the deck, underneath the deck, and ate the fish. And so she went and backed away and sat down while the cat was in there chewing. And, surprisingly, it annihilated that fish in probably like 3 seconds. It must have been a very, very hungry fish. And this time, it came forward and it sat at the edge of the deck, just before where the sunlight would hit it. And it looked out and it meowed. Meow. So she ran back to her house, got 3 more pieces of fish. When she got back, the cat was still setting almost in the sunlight, almost coming out of the deck. She fed it another piece of fish. And it ate it. And this time it meowed. Meow. And she heard a little bit of purring. And this time it actually crept out and sat on her lap and purred. And she pet it. And she thought, my goodness, isn't this the sweetest thing? But as she was petting it, she could feel how hungry it was. She could feel its ribs. This cat was hungry. She had no idea where it had come from or how it had gotten here. So she let it sit on her lap and she fed it the remaining 2 pieces of fish. And by the time she was done, she knew she had made, hopefully, a friend for life. Cats are not necessarily that loyal, but she had a feeling this one would be. So she took it back home before her mother got home from work and let it snuggle up on her bed. And her mother came in and cooked them a nice dinner of beans and barley with a little bit of rabbit meat. It was a stew. And she loved it. She feasted upon it because she had gotten real hungry and she had fed the cat the fish that she was supposed to eat for lunch. Her mother talked about her day working on the farm nearby where they were pulling turnips and working on onions, getting onions harvested, and all those types of things. And then her mother asked her about her day. And so she told her. And her mother got very mad and said, young lady, how do you bring a stray animal into this house? We can barely feed ourselves. How are we supposed to feed a cat? How are we supposed to take care of its medical care? I am not happy with this. She went to her room and she pet the cat and she was crying a little bit because she was afraid her mom was going to make her get rid of the cat. She was also crying though because her mom didn't often yell at her. That made her feel just a little bit sad, a little bit disappointed. But after some time, her mom came in and said, okay, show me this cat. And she lifted the cat out from under her blankets where it had been hiding and sat it on her lap. And it purred and it purred and it purred. And her mom said, oh my goodness, this thing is so sweet. And then she pet the cat too. And she said, this thing is hungry as all heck. And her mom said, okay, we'll think of a way to make this happen. Maybe I can bring home some leftover food from the farm, maybe food that the cats there they didn't eat, or I can get some extra milk from the cows, but we'll make it work. And the girl said, yes, thank you, Mommy. And she jumped up and hugged her mom. And as if the cat understood English, the cat came over and kind of rubbed up against the mother and kind of gave her a little nudge. The refrigerator has started making quite the strange sound. Forgive me if you can hear that. So the girl snuggled up with her cat that night, and she felt safer and cozier than she had in many moons. And when she woke up in the morning, and of course, she didn't wake up naturally, the cat woke her up, as cats are wont to do, by stepping on her face, and her tail was tickling inside of her nose, and she felt claws on the side of her face, those type of things. But the cat woke up, meow, 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 and she went to grab the cat to pet it, and it darted away from her and started meowing again. So she got her clothes on, got her slippers on, and walked towards the cat once more to try to pick it up. And the second she tried to pick it up, it darted away again. And this went on for it must have been 30 minutes. And the cat slowly led her out of her front door, down the path, and into the woods, if you could call them that. It was more of an alpine forest near her house. And the cat kept going and going and going until finally the cat took her to, you wouldn't quite call it a cave, but there was 2 giant boulders leaned up against each other. And underneath the boulders, there was a tiny little passage that went back into the mountain just a bit. And the cat went inside and started meowing. The girl got down on her hands and knees and looked down and said, what are you doing? What do you want? Because somehow she knew the cat wanted her to go in there. So she got down on her hands and knees and crawled in, and she didn't have to crawl far. And inside were 3 little kittens, the cutest kittens you'd ever seen. Their eyes were barely open. They were laying on their backs mewing. And the kitty went and laid down next to them, and they started nursing off of her. And the girl said, "Oh my goodness, you're a mom and you have 3 kittens?" And the cat simply went, "Meow." And the girl said, "Oh no, what are we going to do?" So once the kitty was done nursing, she picked up the 3 kittens, tucked them in the little satchel bag she liked to carry around with her, and walked them back to her house. She had no idea how she was going to explain this to her mother. So she got the kittens set up in her room. She took a little old crate she had that she kept some toys in, laid down some soft cloths and towels, put the kittens in there, and then put the cat in there, which she had yet to name. And when her mom got home, she came in, and immediately she could smell the cats because they were a little stinky, and looked at the crate and said, "What? No, there's kittens. Oh no." And she said, "I brought this home and took out a jar of milk for your cat and for us, but now it's got to feed 3 kittens." And the girl said, "No, Mom, the kittens are still nursing, so we only have to feed the adult cat. We need to give her a name, by the way." And the mom thought and said, "How about Hay Bale?" And the girl said, "Sure, Hay Bale's cute." So they realized they only had to feed Hay Bale. So they put a saucer of milk out, let Hay Bale drink from it and drink from it and drink from it. And, eventually she fell asleep with her kittens, and the girl went to sleep in her bed. And once again, the next morning, she woke up to the cat stomping all over her face, claws coming out, and the exact same thing happened. The cat would walk away from her every time she got close, and she knew that the cat was leading her somewhere. So once more, she followed behind the cat, and this time the cat led her deeper into the village to where there was an old grain silo that they used to store grain for the winter. And she went back behind, and behind it there was a horse trough, or some sort of water trough that used to have water in it but was dried out. And the cat crawled over to the edge of it, and underneath it there was a hole that somebody had dug in the dirt, and the cat crawled down inside. Well, the girl could not crawl down inside of here because she was much too big for the hole, but she put her head down, peeked inside, and she saw the cat nursing 3 more kittens. And she said, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do? 3 more kittens, oh my, ah!" And so she was very panicked, but she knew she had to do the right thing. So she picked the kittens up, put them in her satchel, took them back to the house. She set them inside of the crate, which is now getting pretty full with 6 kittens. And when Hay Bale, the mama cat, jumped in and waited for her mom to come home. This time when the mom came home, she just shook her head and said, "What on earth is going on here?" She had no idea what was happening. And so once again, the mom had managed to bring home some milk. They poured more in the cat's bowl, Hay Bale's bowl, because they knew she would need to have extra nutrition to nurse 6 cats. And she and her daughter shared the rest of the milk at the table along with the porridge that they once again had. And they went to sleep. And the next morning, the cat did the same thing, led the girl out of the house. This time, she led her to a farm on the outskirts of the house where the land was flatter and a little less mountainous. And she went to the back of the farmhouse, and there was a bunch of hay bales. She led the girl into a crack between 2 hay bales. And what did she find there but 3 more kittens that once again Hay Bale sat down, or laid down rather, and nursed them. And at this point, the girl was starting to panic because she thought, how long can this go on? And so, once again, she took the kittens, very gently might I add, put them in her satchel, and walked back to the house. She had to find a bigger crate. She took all of her clothes out of the crate and put them down on the ground so that she could store all the kittens in a bigger crate. And Hay Bale sat down, laid down, nursed all 9 cats, and they all fell asleep. Her mother came home and jokingly said, "How many new cats do we have today?" And the girl just went, and her mom came in and saw them and shook her head and went, "What are we gonna do?" Well, the next morning things got a little better. You see, the kittens did not get up and walk around. They were still calm and peaceful and didn't wake her up. But more importantly, hay bale didn't wake her up this time and just stayed nuzzled up to her shoulder, and they slept. Well, later that day, the mom came home and was very relieved to know they only had 9 kittens, but they still had to take care of 9 kittens. And so the mom couldn't get any more milk. And so once the kittens stopped nursing, the girl had to figure out some way to get more milk. So she had an idea. She took out some construction paper she had, and she made what looked like a little blanket that could go over hay bale's back. And on each side, she wrote, "Please bring milk. We need milk." And she went out and she walked hay bale around to every house. And they would stop on everyone's front porch. And every once in a while, one of the people would see the sign and bring a little bit of milk out. And so she did this with hay bale probably for 10, 15 days until hay bale knew the route. And then this time, she put the sign on hay bale's back, but also put a couple jars. And she said, "Hay bale, collect milk." And believe it or not, hay bale went on the whole route and collected all the milk, came home, and there was plenty of milk for the cats to drink. But as the cats got bigger, even the milk that hay bale and the mom brought home. So she made little signs for all the little kittens. And before long, she had 9 kittens in hay bale all going out every day, house to house, collecting food. And they did this until all the kittens were fully grown. And all the kittens did this basically their whole lives to collect food so that the family of cats could eat. And they got to know each other, and the house was a little dirty, and it was kind of gross having that many litter boxes in the house. But they had a grand old time. And sadly enough, at one point, the girl's mom got very, very sick to where she couldn't get out of bed and she couldn't work. And so the girl taught her army of cats to go out and collect whatever coins they could from the villagers, to collect whatever food they could. And so each day, the cats would bring home a couple coins, which would allow the girl to go to the market and buy food and medicine for her mom. And they would eat the rest of the food that the cats got home. And they lived this way for many, many years. And eventually, the girl's mom healed, and she got back to working on the farm, even though it took a couple years. And the girl decided that she was going to teach the cats to do something even better. So she got a book all about ballet dancing, and she learned how to ballet dance herself. She would pirouette around, I don't know if I'm saying that word right, and dance and teach all of the cats to mimic her. And before long, well, actually it was kind of long, about a year, she had taught all of the cats to do a dance routine with her to an old record she had, which actually happened to be a Def Leppard record. And she would go to the town square and dance and put on shows, and people would give her even more coins. And she did this once a week in her village, but she realized everyone in the village had seen the act. So eventually she saved up enough money to buy a little wagon and a bicycle, and she started taking her cats to all the nearby villages where she would put on the same show. And these villages had more people watching who had never seen anything like this. And they would also give her coins. And before long, she was gone traveling every day in a new city, playing a new town. And once a week on Sunday, she would go back and visit her mom and bring home all these coins. And before long, their house in the village started getting bigger. They were able to add on another room for all the cats to have a place to sleep. And they were able to expand their garden in the back. They were able to cover the outside wood of the house in beautiful stone, to bring in carpet, to buy new furniture. And their life became much, much better. But soon, as these cats were growing, as things tend to happen, they all had kittens. And so she did the same thing. She had taught those kittens to go out and get food, and then taught them to dance. And before long, she taught the kittens to go into the other villages by themselves, Each kitten had 9 kittens of their own, and they were going to villages far and wide and dancing and bringing amazing joy to people's lives and bringing home tons of money. And before long, their house turned into a mansion, for they had to have many more houses for all these cats. And those cats had kittens who went farther and wider to do their dance routines. But even so, after a time, they stopped dancing and they started learning gymnastics, tricks, putting on all sorts of shows. And this little girl who found and took care of one cat eventually had 10,000 cats all over Europe putting on shows. She became one of the wealthiest women in the world, and the money she made, she donated to dog pounds and cat pounds in places where there were sick animals or people starving. And they lived in a beautiful mansion, and she gave her mother a life she had never imagined. She no longer had to work on the farm and do manual labor, but she kept the books and helped manage the money that all the cats were raking in. And once this little girl grew up and got married and had little kids of their own, they carried on the business. But there were 6 of those kids, and they each managed more cats. And soon they had 50,000 cats going all over the country. And before long, they had a castle built, and they were able to take care of all the people in their village. And for many, many years, this kept going on. And they helped as many people as they could, as many animals as they could, and brought joy to many. And all because one girl had saw the chance to help out a little cat that was trapped under a deck. And it just goes to show, you never know what effect a good deed will have on the world around you. So this story wasn't my traditional story. There weren't knights or secret agents or bombs or explosions. But it was silly, and it was all made up on the fly. I don't even know why. I wasn't even thinking about cats today. But I want to wish my Alden the very best of nights. And to any other children or even grown-ups out there, I want you to know you are very much appreciated. And I hope that you'll consider subscribing, liking, maybe clicking the bell, or any of those things to help my insane stories proliferate upon the world and generate madness the likes we have never seen. Good night.